longer. Yeah, we have live Fox News team coverage. Griff Jenkins is near Alligator Point, Florida, out in the Gulf, where mandatory evacuation orders are in place.
And as I mentioned, Janice has been watching for that 5 a.m. advisory. Janice, have you seen any new information?
The new information is the storm is strengthening, continue to strengthen as we get closer to a landfall sometime this afternoon. The bottom line here is the Panhandle of Florida has never, ever experienced a storm like this in their history. We are going to be talking about catastrophic, life-threatening damage, storm surge, and hurricane force winds in excess of 140 miles per hour for a duration of several hours. So the latest update as of 5 a.m., it is strengthening. It could actually strengthen even more as we get into the next couple of hours as we approach landfall. And I mean, the storm in the textbooks here is a perfect looking hurricane. All 4 quadrants have filled out. We've got a well-defined eye. This is unfortunately a worst case scenario for the Panhandle of Florida. Already seeing wind gusts in excess of 35 miles per hour along the coast, 33 in Apalachicola. And again, we are expecting a landfall sometime this afternoon, maybe between 1 and 3. Still yet to be determined, but the strength of this storm is going to be, unfortunately, the legacy of it. Storm surge is going to be an issue. Tampa Bay, we're talking about 3 to 4 feet. But as we get up northward to Horseshoe Bay, Fish Creek, St. Mark's, we could be dealing with a storm surge of upwards of 12 to 13 to 14 feet. That is above your homes in some cases. That is going to be extraordinarily dangerous. So the storm surge, unfortunately, the water push is what kills the most people in these hurricanes. Flooding is going to be a big concern, 4 to 8 inches, isolated amounts of 12 inches plus. And of course, this is going to move north and eastward and could potentially affect areas that were impacted by Hurricane Florence. This is a big deal. This is going to be going down in the history books for the Panhandle of Florida. Prayers right now are needed for them.
Yeah, and this popped up so fast and got really strong so fast.
The Gulf of Mexico waters right now are incredibly warm.
It's a bathtub.
And it is a bathtub. And we've had, a few days warning, but not enough, I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
All right, Janice, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And President Trump already declaring a state of emergency in Florida.
So we are very well prepared. FEMA's ready. We're all ready. Spoke with Governor Scott. Spoke to everybody that you have to speak to. And I think that hopefully we'll get lucky. But
Griff Jenkins is live in Alligator Point, where the storm is starting to pick up this morning. And Griff, you're in a pretty vulnerable position there on that little peninsula sticking out in the Gulf. How's it looking?
Good morning, Rob. Here's the thing. Janice, really, you can't overstate the danger that the storm surge is bringing to this area. This is the Big Bend. We're going to be on the dirty side of the eye if it comes in and hits in Panama City. And this area is particularly under an unprecedented threat, according to officials, because the fact that when you go 40, 50 miles out into the Gulf, and we are right on the Gulf now, it is shallow water. So you have the dirty side of this Cat 4 hurricane bringing miles and miles of shallow water, and it is going to dump it on this area. And these homes behind me are absolutely likely to be washed away. Roads in the flooding is going to go all the way in the low-lying marshy areas towards Tallahassee. Now, if you go back 13 years to Dennis, more than 70 people were killed. That hurricane came on landfall closer to Pensacola. The eye wall is tracking much closer east to this way, which means the dirty side is going to be dirtier. And it is homes just like this one behind me that is likely to take absolutely devastating damage as we see the water coming up and already bashing it. And we are hours before. But I want to show you something, Rob and Julian, really quickly, and that is the road conditions. This road right here that runs along Alligator Point was washed out under a much lesser hurricane a year ago, 2 years ago, Hermine, a really nothing burger hurricane. But as you can see, the road is still not recovered. Imagine what is going to happen. And I know it's dark, but this road already. Now, we had talked to a couple, Michael and Lisa and their dog Summer, that decided to ride the storm out because when you add in the wind, the power lines that come down, the trees of the National Forest, as well as the expected unprecedented storm surge, people were worried about ever getting back in here and getting their homes fixed. But they came out about 20 minutes ago. They did not want to go on camera because of the urgency. They wanted to get out of here now as the mandatory evacuation urged people hours ago. They were holding out for their property, but this road, for the people in dozens of homes that are down this road along Alligator Alley and going further west, are going to have a serious problem trying to get past this road at some point. You see the water washing up and taking it out already. We see new devastation being pushed up as we look at it. And as I pointed out, we get a little farther away. It's probably too dark for you to see, but this is the vantage of the house, and you can see the tide coming up. Now, when you have a landfall coming in the afternoon, Rob and Jillian, that means high tide, which is expected around 3 p.m. today. You're going to have 12 to 14 feet of storm surge with a Cat 4 hurricane, winds of over 100 miles an hour on the dirty side, lashing them. That is why the officials, like Lieutenant Chris Savory, had this very urgent warning very quickly. Take a listen.
We do this not to cause panic. It's because we're nervous and we're concerned for the safety. We want you out of there. It's a matter of life and death sometimes.
And I'll throw it back to you. We're going to go and keep working our way so that we can quickly get out of here. But the message is, if you're awake and you're anywhere east of where that landfall is coming and you've got a chance to get out, you're almost too late. But if you're listening to us, get out now, because this is going to take lives and possibly, as Janice said, historic damage.
Yeah,
Rob,
Griff, I was just going to ask you, you're not going to be able to stay there for the storm because a 12-foot storm surge in your position is going to go right over your head. Yeah. So I'm glad to hear you're getting out of there.
That's right. And, you know, you really can't underestimate when you mix storm surge with a catastrophic wind event, the challenges. I'm going to do one more thing, and I'm going to give it back to you. If you'll just pan up, remember these areas, these poles, this is one of hundreds of thousands of power lines, right? That power line is attached to that house in the storm. So if the house gets wiped out, the high winds take this pole down, and you're on this road that's washing out. That is a recipe for epic devastation and a very, very serious life-threatening situation.
Yeah. Live wires, you never want to mess with them. Thank you very much, Griff. Dangerous situation down there. We'll keep you updated.
Stay safe. All right, to Washington now and back into politics. Everybody talking about the sudden resignation of UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, the change effective at the end of the year.
But President Trump already out with his list of candidates to replace her. Let's get right to Doug Luzader in our nation's capital with who is under consideration. Doug.
Good morning. Yeah, you know, this came as such a surprise yesterday. It was tough to come up with even a speculative short list of candidates. The president made this announcement at the White House with Nikki Haley by his side. He praised her work and said that this transition has been in the works for some time. As for possible replacements, the president said he was considering perhaps 5 candidates and planned to name a successor in coming weeks. Now, here are some of the names that have been tossed around, at least. There's presidential daughter Ivanka Trump, even though the president seemed to distance himself from that idea. There's a former Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell and U.S. Ambassador to Germany Rick Grenell.
Well, Dina's certainly a person I would consider, and she is under consideration. I've heard a lot of names. I've heard Ivanka. I've heard, how good would Ivanka be? The people that know that Ivanka would be dynamite. But, you know, I'd then be accused of nepotism, if you can believe it, right?
Now, as for Nikki Haley and her political future, there's always been talk about a possible presidential run down the line. She seemed to rule that out, at least in the near term yesterday, saying that she would be supporting President Trump in 2020. Rob and Jillian.
All right,
Doug, thanks so much.
It is 10 minutes after the hour, and as we just mentioned, Nikki Haley blindsiding Washington, bowing out as President Trump's UN ambassador. The
South Carolina native leaving some big shoes to fill at the UN. So who is in the running to replace her? Former State Department press officer Morgan Ortagus weighs in. Coming up next.
Good morning and welcome back. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley announcing her surprise resignation as she leaves behind a lasting impact of putting America first on the world stage. President Trump narrowing the short list of replacements to 5 people at this point. So who could be on it? Let's ask former State Department press officer Morgan Ortagus. Good morning, Morgan. Who is at the top of your list? Who do you think is the number one who has the best chance?
Well, the name that we've heard the most is Dina Powell. Many people would recognize her because she was the Deputy National Security Advisor for the first year of the Trump presidency. She also appears to be very close with Jared and Ivanka, who are, of course, influential in this administration. She was a well-liked official in the Bush administration as well. So she's certainly someone that the president mentioned by name yesterday. He didn't mention that many people by name, but she was one of them.
Well, another name, Morgan, floating around is Kelly Ayotte, former Republican senator from New Hampshire. Yes. What do you think about Kelly?
You know, she's an interesting choice. She is a very, very strong foreign policy credentials. She lost the Senate narrowly in 2016, and she is somebody that actually has helped shepherd some of President Trump's nominees through the Senate judicial process and has tried to be helpful to the administration. So another strong, sophisticated woman in foreign policy that I think the president will take seriously.
So whoever does get nominated for this is going to have to go through a Senate confirmation. So I know Ivanka Trump is somewhat on this list, probably not very likely there. You also have Robert O'Brien, who is a special presidential envoy for hostage affairs, not a familiar name. And then you also have Gary Cohn, which I thought was a very interesting name to be put on the list because I didn't think that the White House had a very good relationship with Gary Cohn after he left.
Well, let me just say that I don't think that we should be so dismissive of Ivanka Trump. Yesterday, whenever Ambassador Haley left, she praised Jared and Ivanka for what they've been doing. She's had a very active international profile. A lot of it would depend on if Republicans keep the Senate, but I think most of the senators that I speak to speak very highly of Ivanka. You've certainly seen, RFK serving in JFK's cabinet. There's precedent there before, although a lot of people would argue that, that the rules have changed since then. But I don't think I don't know why we all sort of dismiss Ivanka, because I think would be a fantastic representative for the president. It seems like she may not be so interested, but the point of picking Gary Cohn is not necessarily that the president has him on the short list. I don't think we know who it is. I actually think there's a decent chance it is going to be an outside pick, though. Someone named Rand Paul yesterday, Senator Rand Paul. Don't know if it's going to be him. We're also hearing other cabinet members because, as you said, Rob, the issue is who is confirmable, right? So is he maybe going to pull someone else from the cabinet like a Ryan Zinke into this position? Look for an outsider pick there. I think the president often likes to go with people that will give us a little bit of a surprise.
All right. Certainly see.
And maybe somebody that's controllable, too. Somebody that they can, kind of control more than they could with Nikki Haley. Somebody that Pompeo and Bolton can actually push around.
That's a really good point, Rob. I do think that Haley did get along with the president and with Pompeo, but you're right. The UN ambassador does report to Pompeo. So Pompeo and Ambassador Bolton, I think, are both going to have a very vested interest in who this choice is.
Okay. All right. Morgan Ortagus, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
All right. 16 minutes after the hour, Democrats selling socialism on the campaign trail.
Public colleges and universities tuition-free.
Medicare for all, tuition-free public college.
So are millennials buying into the land of make-believe where everything is free?
And forget Bridezilla, the photographer who just put a bride's stepmother in her place.
Hurricane Michael, now a powerful Category 4 storm, starting to reach the Florida Panhandle with the outer bands right now. The potentially deadly storm is expected to be one of the worst hurricanes to ever hit that area in the Panhandle, with storm surges up to 13 feet.
Winds increasing to nearly 140 miles per hour and could intensify before making landfall today.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on that. California officials say they don't know if thousands of people mistakenly registered to vote by the Department of Motor Vehicles cast ballots in the June primary. California's Secretary of State now wanting to freeze the botched DMV voter registration program, which registered 1,500 people to vote incorrectly. That number included at least one non-citizen. This latest finding comes a month after the DMV says a total of 23,000 voter registration errors may have been made.
And as California trends towards socialism and Democrats drift further left, nearly a third of millennials are jumping on the Bernie Sanders bandwagon.
The ideas that we campaigned on, which a few years ago were seen to be radical ideas, are now mainstream ideas.
A recent BuzzFeed poll suggests Sanders is correct. 31% of people between the ages of 22 and 37 years old say they identify as a socialist or democratic socialist. The shocking numbers come as Sanders announces a 9-state campaign tour for Democrats running in November.
That really is wild. All right, let's talk some movies. First Man tells the story of American astronaut Neil Armstrong and his historic Apollo 11 mission to the moon.
It's made headlines for its controversial omission of the American flag, but before it blasts into theaters, is it worth your money?
Here with his review, Fox News contributor Kevin McCarthy. Kevin, I guess the flag's in the movie, but not the planning of the flag, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the flag is all over this film, Rob and Jillian. Good morning to you guys. I've seen the film 3 times now, and I've been struggling with the idea that people are calling the film anti-American because it's one of the most patriotic and pro-American films I've seen. And listen, I understand the emotion, the idea of not seeing the physical pull of the flag going into the lunar rocks. But I'll tell you right now, I've seen the film 3 times, as I mentioned, and the flag is all over this film in many, many scenes. Actually is on the moon in massive IMAX shots. Damien Chazelle directed this film, who directed La La Land and Whiplash, and this is a real personal story about Neil Armstrong. And speaking of American heroes, this movie kind of really focuses on the heroes and the astronauts who lost their lives that allowed the mission of Apollo 11 to actually happen. All the people who lost their lives in the Gemini and all the different in the plug test with Ed White, and there's a lot of American heroes and astronauts who lost their lives to allow Neil and Buzz to walk on that moon. So I think the movie really focuses on those sacrifices, but also a very personal story that Ryan Gosling does an amazing job playing this role. Also Claire Foy. I think it's a brilliant film from a technical and an emotional achievement. They used absolutely no green screen in this film, Rob, which is absolutely insane to think about. They actually had massive LED screens outside these capsules that the actors could see and interact with the light that they were seeing in these missions. So it was very, very cool to kind of see a very POV perspective of what it was like for Neil and these astronauts to be in these capsules. It was very, very fascinating. I gave the movie a 5 out of 5. I absolutely love this film, and I think Damien has achieved a massive technical achievement here, and I do recommend seeing it in IMAX for sure.
All right. What do you think of A Star is Born? There's been a lot of conversation around that.
Oh, Jillian, I love this movie, and I'm not afraid to admit this on national TV. I cried like a little baby at the end of this thing. I mean, it was genuinely an emotional experience in regards to just, to me, it's the combination of 2 of the most beautiful forms of art, music and filmmaking. And you're dealing with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, who deliver masterful performances. Bradley Cooper co-wrote, directed, and starred in this film. And you have amazing music. The soundtrack is fantastic, but it really just kind of hits that sweet spot of emotion for me. And I think it really, really worked on an emotional level, but also a great filmmaking level, giving you perspective from the stages. They actually shot some of these concert scenes at real concerts. And the cool thing about that, by the way, we all know the Chris Christopherson, Barbra Streisand version of this film. One of the shows that Bradley Cooper hopped on stage at to get some performance footage and concert footage, he was up right before Chris Christopherson was playing a set at one of the shows, which is kind of ironic and very, very cool. But I gave it a 5 out of 5 as well. Ooh. I don't give that many 5 out of 5s, and I know I'm getting 2 in this segment this week, but those are 2 of my favorite films of the year so far. I've only given about 6 5s this year, and I've seen close to 100 films, so I'm very, very excited about this year in movies in general.
So. Yeah, Kevin, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
Now back to this Fox News alert. Breaking overnight, Hurricane Michael now a Category 4, just hours away from making landfall. We are live smack in the middle of the storm.
Mexico's president-elect wants to legalize some drugs, but is putting more narcotics on the street, or at least not punishing for it, really the right way to go. Our next guest is calling it a move straight out of the Liberals' playbook. Stay tuned.
Hurricane Michael quickly intensifying to a Category 4, taking aim at the Florida Panhandle. The governor urgently sounding the alarm to get out now.
Jonathan Suri is on Panama City Beach this morning, where mandatory evacuations are in place. Jonathan.
Robin, Jillian, as you can see, we are getting the outer rain bands of this storm as it moves ashore. We've covered previous storms in this community where restaurants would stay open until the last minute. Not with this case. In fact, yesterday, most restaurants were already closed. People heeding the warnings, taking them very seriously. Right now, there are mandatory evacuations underway for zones A, B, and C. What that means is the 3 zones closest to the water, they are telling everyone to get out. Governor Rick Scott is urging residents not to take any chances.
Hurricane Michael is forecast to be the most destructive storm to hit the Florida Panhandle in decades. This storm will be life-threatening and extremely dangerous. This storm will bring torrential rain to most of the Panhandle and Big Bend, which means flooding will be a major issue.
Yeah, Hurricane Hunter aircraft have been flying through this storm, taking detailed measurements as it's been strengthening out in the Gulf. As it approaches the Florida Panhandle, parts of the region could see as much as a foot of rain over a very short period of time, and powerful winds could produce a storm surge of up to 13 feet. That's going to cause serious problems in these low-lying areas along the coast. These coastal communities are very low to the ground. Back to you guys.
All right, Jonathan, Sari, stay safe down there.
Turkish media releasing this surveillance video believed to be an assassination squad linked to the murder of a prominent journalist. The agents are shown inside the Saudi Arabian consulate located in Istanbul, Turkey, where Turkish officials say Jamal Khashoggi was dismembered and killed, ordered by the Saudi royal court. This surveillance video also showing a black van leaving for the consul's home. Khashoggi was an outspoken critic of the Saudi leadership. He went missing a week ago. The kingdom denies the allegations.
The second nuclear summit with North Korea could happen at the Winter White House. The president now considering bringing Kim Jong-un to Florida.
We're setting that up right now.
Did you get it tomorrow?
He'd probably like that. I'd like that too. I think it would be good, but we'll see.
The president has hosted Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Chinese President Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago.
House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy has a new plan to pay for President Trump's border wall. His Build the Wall, Enforce the Law Act would dedicate over $23 billion to building the Mexico wall. It would also cut funds for sanctuary cities and facilitate the deportations of immigrant gang members. The proposal comes as a new report from the Center for Immigration Studies finds that female illegal immigrants had nearly 300,000 children in the United States in just the year 2014, costing more than $2 billion to this country. That's $800 million more than the Senate approved to build the border wall just this year for this portion of the funding.
Today marks 27 days until the midterm elections, but many Americans are already casting their ballots. The polls opening up early in 3 more states. Voters in Ohio, Indiana, and Arizona able to cast their ballots starting today. 37 states plus the District of Columbia permit early voting.
All right, you still have 2 chances to get filthy rich this week. The Mega Millions jackpot soaring to $548 million. Nobody won last night.
The lucky numbers 20, 22, 39, 54, 60 with a mega ball of 18. Friday's prize will be the 3rd largest jackpot in Mega Millions history. And tonight is a huge Powerball drawing with $282 million up for grabs.
I would have picked none of those numbers.
President Trump rallying supporters in Iowa on a major issue affecting America this midterm season, the drug crisis.
We got our money to help us out with the opioid crisis, $6 billion.
More than 115 people die every day from opioid overdoses. Imagine that. So which party has a better plan to address this epidemic?
Radio talk show host George Rodriguez served in both the Reagan and George H.W. Bush administrations and joins us now. Thank you for your time. What do you make of what you're hearing from President Trump?
Well, I think that we've got, I mean, obviously it's a problem that we need to address. The opioid crisis, as we've seen, is coming both from the street drugs as well as from over-medication, over-prescribing drugs and people misusing them. It's got to be addressed in two manners, and I think that one of the things that's happening is that we continue to hear the liberal approach from the Democrats where, you know, they're soft on crime, they want to do this, they want to do that, and spend a lot of money, which is, you know, very heart-feeling, touchy type of stuff. But we also have got to get tough. You know, the wall we've got. We not only have drugs that are going across the counter here in the United States. We've got all those drugs coming across the border.
Yeah, get tough on the doctors who are prescribing these things wrongly and get tough on the dealers as well. Let's talk about Mexico for a second. They've got a new president coming in, López Obrador, and he is inheriting a pretty rough situation in his country. They've got a lot of crime, a lot of murders, and a lot of drugs. What do you think of his plan to try and reduce this problem in Mexico?
Well, again, López Obrador is a AMLO, as they call him. He's a socialist. He's in the style of the folks down in Venezuela, yeah. And he is taking a very, very liberal approach to the issue. He wants to legalize opium, the opium sales. He wants to pay farmers for raising corn so that they can raise, so they can get away from the poppy seeds. You know, these things are great, but I think what it's going to happen here is you're going to create mom and pop pushers instead of the cartels, and that's going to complicate the issue of our ability to defend the border, to stop the illegal flow. That's going to make it a whole lot more difficult because you're going to have mom and pop pushers, mom and pop folks selling drugs and bringing drugs across.
In some areas in this country, I mean, it seems like the drug problem has just gotten exponentially worse in a short period of time. Do you think we need to be talking about this more?
Definitely. I think just like we've got a problem with illegal immigration, a big problem with illegal immigration, as you just mentioned a little while ago, we've got a big problem with the drug flow. I mean, this issue of the cartels, as well as folks, just common folks, bringing and sneaking drugs in, we've got to address it in some form or fashion. We've got to get more, the border has got to be secured. We need a wall, we need more personnel, we need technology, we need all of those things, maybe even considering the military, but we need a lot of stuff to do that. I've got friends of mine who are always talking about, you know, even surgical strikes on the issue, on the cartels. I'm not sure, you know, if I go that far, but the issue is we've got to address it. We've got to get tough. We're losing a lot of Americans every day.
Got to dry up the supply. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Rodriguez. We appreciate your time. 37 minutes after the hour, a true Halloween horror story for some trick-or-treaters in town where asking for candy could be a criminal offense.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
Hillary Clinton praising the left's chaos, saying this is exactly how they should be acting. Carly Shimkus is here live with the reaction.
All right, praise pouring in from Washington after U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, announces her resignation.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115. Here with how she's being remembered as a fierce leader who put America first. And a ton of people were surprised yesterday, Carly.
Oh, yeah, big time surprise on this one because, you know, she has a very good relationship with the president and she's really seen as a star within his administration. But as you said, a lot of praise pouring in on social media. Ivanka Trump says that she is not going to replace Nikki Haley, but she also tweeted this. Ambassador Haley has served America with dignity and distinction. She is a bold reformer and has been an unwavering champion of truth, principled realism, and integrity within the United Nations. Jared and I are grateful for her friendship and a true blessing in our lives. House Speaker Paul Ryan says he is sad to see her go. He tweets, Nikki Haley has been a clear, consistent, and powerful voice for America America's interests and democratic principles on the world stage. She challenged friend and foe to be better. I am saddened that she is leaving the administration, but so grateful for her service. Thank you, Nikki. And Mark Meadows kind of called her a trailblazer in this tweet. He says Nikki Haley has set a new standard for what American leadership at the UN should look like. She stood with her allies and held her adversaries accountable, even when it requires standing alone on the world stage. We will miss her, but we are better off thanks to her service. So no word on what she's going to be doing next, but she says she is not going to be running for president in 2020, but she will be campaigning for the president.
You know, I think everybody would love to know what is new with Hillary Clinton today.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure everybody is just on the edge of their seats for that one. You know, as anti-Trump activists are really targeting Republican politicians, the question over civility in America has been a consistent talking point among lawmakers. And now Hillary Clinton says that this is not the time for Democrats to be civil. Watch.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again.
Well, is this a dangerous message, though? Kimberly says she needs to remember that can go both ways. And another Twitter user writing, as their side openly encourages the hunting and harassing of Republicans. Wow, yikes.
All right, and a university with a new course called Trumpaganda? I got to hear about this.
Trump, that's right. So the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, they're launching an eight-week course called Trumpaganda. And this is a little bit of the description. It says the Trump administration's conflict with the press, challenging America's tendencies to think of propaganda as something that doesn't happen in democratic society. So it's going to discuss the president's impact on the press and democracy on a whole level. Daniel says your tuition dollars at work. And another Twitter user says another waste of money. Way to go. The president's relationship with the press, I'm sure, will be many chapters in upcoming history books.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Carly, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Let's get back to this Fox News alert now. Hurricane Michael already unleashing on the Florida Panhandle. We are live in the bullseye next.
And outrage over an anti-police halftime performance that depicted students pointing guns at police officers lying on the ground. Why hasn't the band's director been fired yet? That's a question being asked. Why our next guest, Graham Allen, who fought in the military for our freedom, is pointing the finger at parents at this school.
But first, let's check in with Todd Pyro, live in Erie, Pennsylvania, having breakfast with friends. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Jillian. Hope all is well with you. Hey, this place is really fired up, so much so we have something I've never seen before. Reservations for a Breakfast with Friends segment here in Erie, Pennsylvania. Fancy. So fired up, mainly about one main topic, and it's Brett Kavanaugh. Here's Wayne. Wayne, why do you think everybody is so fired up about Brett Kavanaugh?
I think we see finally once and for all how disgustingly low the Democrats will go, or were willing to go, to destroy a man's reputation just for their benefit.
Understood. Thank you, Wayne. We're going to be talking to more folks like Wayne throughout the morning. And I know when you guys think Erie, Pennsylvania, of course you think Cajun. Well, take a look. These are Cajun eggs. I really have nothing else further to say other than Cajun eggs.
That's exactly what I think.
Looking good.
Back to you guys.
Todd, thanks so much.
And I can't hear you because I
we'll
lost this thing, so I'm just going to wave.
Be right back. All right, calls now growing for a marching band director to be fired following his band's controversial halftime show depicting police officers being held at gunpoint.
So a lot of people are asking, why hasn't someone already been held accountable for this tactless display? So many people just outraged by this.
Yeah. Here now to weigh in is CRTV host and Army veteran Graham Allen. Thanks for coming on this morning, Graham. You have a pretty strong opinion about this. We watched your rant. It was about a 5-minute video that went viral. Tell us what you think about this.
Yeah, well, you know, I think first and foremost, thanks for having me. But one thing I want to start off by pointing out is, as a Mississippian myself, this is my home state, and I think that just the general community here is just kind of shocked by this, because this is Mississippi, and this kind of thing doesn't happen here. And what I mean by that is Mississippi, we stand by our president, we stand by our military, and we support our law enforcement community. And I think that's the biggest thing that shocked people is this is a place that this kind of stuff doesn't happen.
The Forest Hill High School band director has been placed on administrative leave. A lot of people wondering why this person has not yet been fired. I know in your rant you say you blame the band director, you blame parents. Can we even, a question, put blame on students? I mean, in high school you are old enough to know right from wrong. Now it's claimed that they were loosely depicting the movie John Q. I watched it. I didn't see that in the movie.
Well, yeah, I missed the part where, students pretended to hold cops hostage on a football field as well. And like you said, I think it's crazy. We fired football coaches for praying with athletes, but when you have a situation like this, which is political, at the end of the day, no matter how they want to depict this is an adult male, the band director, that is pushing a social justice agenda onto children, students. And like you said, can we hold the students accountable? I think you can, but it's not 100% their fault. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, this falls down at the most basic level on parenting. As a former band person myself in high school, I know for a fact that this was practiced for months, all the way back into the summertime. They've been practicing this routine. So why didn't anyone say anything? At no point any student thought, maybe this isn't appropriate, or wow, this is weird. No, we've started raising a generation that's just something that's acceptable, pretending even to hold police officers at gunpoint on a football field. No one says anything. That falls 100% on the parents. It is our job to teach our kids the values that we want to hold dear. Right. It is the school's job to teach our kids academics. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the way, we as parents got lazy, and we just started letting other people teach our kids about morals and values and do our job for us.
Right, yeah. A lot of people credit left-wing politicians, even some people say the Obama administration, for the huge divide between the black community in this country and the police force that protects us. And a lot of people say that a lot of that rhetoric has led to some of the violence against police officers that we've seen. We saw in Dallas 5 police officers shot and killed at a Black Lives Matter rally. Do you think that in a way that kind of talk has led people down this road where it's okay to make a display like this at a halftime show, where it's okay to hate the cops?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the narrative today is that cops are these power-hungry individuals that just want to do what they want to do, how they want to do it. And unfortunately, the social media narrative, because all you ever see on the internet are the very small amount of cops that do make a mistake. Right. And so it's created this divide. Unfortunately, it's created this divide that cops hate black people, which is the furthest thing from the truth. I do a lot of work with the local law enforcement agencies, city, county, state troopers. A lot of them are African American, and the main thing that these men and women want is to simply protect our community. And you should hear the law enforcement officers actually having conversations with people that should go to jail, but they don't, because they actually just care about these people.
Well, we want to read in part the statement from the superintendent, Dr. Green. It says, quote, "We are in full force investigating and interviewing all of the folks who were involved in the decision. I would urge the broader community to remember that these are young people. We should not be disrespecting them." Graham, thank you for your time. And I know that, your area in Mississippi is one that has been hit by a police officer shooting. So I know it's very sensitive to the community down there. We appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, we'll see how this develops. Graham, thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course.
Thanks, guys.
Hurricane Michael strengthening into a Category 4 storm as it nears the Florida Panhandle. Some residents are preparing to ride out the potentially deadly storm despite evacuation orders.
Ray Bogan is live in Apalachicola, where Michael is expected to make a direct hit. Ray.
Yeah, good morning, Rob and Jillian. You know, the conditions here right now have gotten a lot worse in the last couple hours. Much heavier wind, much heavier rain. And this is the big concern behind me. That's the Apalachicola River. It started flooding about 4 o'clock yesterday, and it's only gotten higher since. In fact, forecasters say we could get anywhere from 9 to 13-foot storm surges in this area. Now, all of Franklin County, where I am, is under a mandatory evacuation, and they're giving a big caution, especially to the 3 barrier islands, St. Vincent, St. George, and Dog Island, that are just off the coast here. But despite those warnings, some of the residents have decided to stay.
I read by the residents looking around. I said, well, they're home. Just hunker down, boarded down, gonna ride it out.
There are police officers monitoring bridges. Governor Rick Scott said leave now because once they're closed, they're closed. The governor also urged people to listen to officials and get out because he said the storm could be deadly.
Remember, we can rebuild your house. We cannot rebuild your life. Think about your kids, your grandkids, all your family members. Take care of them. Take this seriously and keep your family safe.
Apalachicola police officer today, he estimated about 60 to 65% of the residents in this town are going to stay and ride out the storm. Back to you.
It's about to hit. Ray, thanks so much. We'll be right back.